At face value, this clip,
Look like that guy over there.
or
I ripped my pants again.
seem harmless. Nothing seemingly wrong about them, just SpongeBob trying to make the people laugh. But what if I told you they all epitomise an unfortunate realism, an idea that clearly materialises when you look at the people around you? Your neighbours, your work colleagues, your family, your friends, even wider within your social network. The urge to impress no matter the cost. But for a moment, let me bring down the theatrics and make this you-centered. Chances are you found yourself in deep thought about one of the following 3 topics this week. 1. Your financial current status. 2. Your current health status. Or 3. An ever-pressing topic nowadays being your current social status. Which actually brings us to a scene I'm sure we've all seen.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
But I'd imagine with limited context as it actually happens before this.
What are they, vegetables or fruit? And what does that make? Ketchup?
A poorly received attempt at SpongeBob being comedic, or more closer to home, a fear-induced attempt at performing, an emotion I'm sure everyone knows. Whether it's a presentation at your place of work or school, performance, the creation or starting of something new, maybe that new business idea you got, it usually arrives gift wrapped with the fear of being judged, harsh but unwarranted criticism, and as previously mentioned, the urge to impress, for you to personally be accepted, sometimes doing anything to be loved. So where does this lead? In many cases, social anxiety binding us, stopping any momentum when you're doing meaningful things, trying to live out your life, achieve your goals. So if it is a problem clearly faced by everyone, then what can you do about it? Or we can act like SpongeBob did in the episode Squirrel Jokes, which I've really come to appreciate as I've matured, much like many other simple yet life-conscious episodes within the series. The episode starts with a comedy show being hosted at the Krusty Krab, which knowing Mr. Krab, definitely started as a money grab. First act comes on and is actually able to successfully make the whole crowd laugh, warming them up for the next start of the show, SpongeBob. SpongeBob gets on, starts his act, and as you probably guessed, he tries again, nothing. He's resilient and so goes for another joke. And we all know what happens next.
Oh, brother, this guy stinks!
This even leads the other people within the crowd to jump in on this bandwagon. The pressure starts mounting on SpongeBob, who's now looking for anything he can use to break the ice, impress the people. He scans around, looks at Sandy's teeth, takes a punt and decides he's gonna make some. And the crowd are actually now finally engaged, so he continues. They are absolutely loving it. But at the same time, Sandy is noticeably getting uncomfortable. SpongeBob concludes his act there and everybody's happy. Due to the success of his act, Mr. Krabs decides he's going to do this again with SpongeBob headlining, and as you can imagine, he's feeling on top of the world. Sandy shortly comes over to speak to him about his act and mentions how his jokes were hurtful, which he deflects by saying,
Come on, Sandy, I was just joking. We all gotta laugh at ourselves once in a while.
which results in them coming to an agreement that it's all good, there's no hard feelings. Now, without understanding SpongeBob as a character, it may seem like he uses Sandy as a means to an end to obtain success, but a bare argument would be it's due to his ignorance of her feelings at play due to his childlike innocence consistently displayed across the series. But here, even this I'd argue against, as for a change, I genuinely believe while he wholeheartedly believed what he said earlier, this is a clear showcase of much like in real life where we sometimes do things based less on our true interests but the interests of others around us and the positive perception we want perceived by them. The best example being buying things we don't need and probably don't want, yet do it for the likes, the praise, the acclaim, even if it means likely financial ruin. It's easy to become blinded by the lifestyle coupled with validation, stardom, often sought for by many, which is a struggle that becomes more apparent for SpongeBob as the episode goes on. The episode moves on to Sandy proceeding as she would on a normal day by doing some shopping, but something feels a bit different in the air. The people have ran away with SpongeBob's act and are taking the jokes literally.
It's the stupid squirrel!
I know, let's try and communicate with it. Duh.
Before the next show, Sandy has a word with SpongeBob and explains since the jokes, everyone is treating her different and requests him to lay off the which SpongeBob initially reluctant, but with some evidence,
Hello, Sandy. Me, Patrick.
decides to listen and proceeds to the stage with his.
Other jokes?
And well, you could probably guess how this part goes. The people want the
Squirrel jokes! Squirrel jokes!
Under the pressure to perform, he's now faced with a decision: continue to impress everyone at the expense of his friend, or go against the grain and continue his quote-unquote bad jokes. Unfortunately, the desire to be loved takes front and center, bending into the will of the people who he continues to impress.
Howdy, y'all!
But you see, the lack of emotional intelligence showcased by SpongeBob isn't that surprising to me. As civilization has continued to move forward, humans have always found it advantageous and so a reason to be part of a group, ranging from survival considerations like hunting and resource sharing to psychological considerations like identity, validation and purpose, which still shape how we live today, with psychological considerations normally being a requirement for someone to be welcomed but also feel a sense of belonging to a group. This dynamic is also mirrored in the underwater civilization of Bikini Bottom.
Lying always makes it worse. I own a 5-star restaurant. Squidward. I had no idea.
The problem here is the quest for belonging and validation can in many examples found in historic and modern times mean being part of heinous and world-altering movements. It would be a stretch in terms of gravity of the event to compare the examples previously shown to SpongeBob's Squirrel Jokes. However, I do think we should consider that the planting of a seed, here being jokes, were taken as facts to where Sandy, only after a day following the show, started to be treated differently, negatively to be precise. Who's to say that small seed couldn't over time grow into hate crimes against squirrels, all rooted in seeking validation? But you see, validation in itself isn't always wrong. What really matters is a consideration of who you seek it from, how you plan to seek it, and to what purpose are you actually seeking it. After finishing his act, Sandy congratulates him and invites him to her home to celebrate, initially seeming like everything was perfect, but when he gets there, he realizes that everything is just a bit off. Sandy has adopted the characteristics of the Squirrel Jokes. Through the adoption of the jokes, she puts SpongeBob in a few panic-inducing, even slightly harmful situations, allowing him finally to understand her viewpoint and say,
No more squirrel jokes.
The episode moves on to another night at the comedy show. SpongeBob starts his headline act, mentions squirrels, instantly exciting the audience. But finally truly having the courage to be disliked, to laugh at himself, as he mentioned earlier on in the episode, swiftly moves on to jokes about him being a sponge, following this with jokes across the different types of sea creatures present, which the people surprisingly generally loved, ending on a high note as he was able to stay true to his friends and, in this scenario, what was morally right.
Don't even get me started on starfish.
To me, this is a showcase of simple yet intentionally vivid writing, as it's only after SpongeBob is able to take his own advice regarding everyone needing to laugh at themselves once in a while and actually doing it whilst on stage does he demonstrate true courage. In this moment, he didn't care about anything other than doing what he believes is funny, what is right by his friend, and ultimately what makes him him, the authentic yellow sponge who lives in a pineapple, and so based on this, clearly doesn't usually let the thoughts of others change attributes of his life. And so we usually see SpongeBob doing what he loves without being swayed by others, which eventually follows through in this episode. So how can we be like SpongeBob, or better yet, how can we also adopt this mindset? By simply understanding two things. First is that many people overestimate how much others think about them. A man named David Foster Wallace once said, "You stop caring what people think about you when you realize how seldom they do." This quote highlights that we often worry excessively about others' opinions of our actions or of ourselves. In reality, people are usually preoccupied with their own lives and frankly don't have the bandwidth to focus on you. When I first wanted to start this YouTube channel in 2020, I hesitated for years due to this concern. And when I finally did, I'll be honest, I did receive a few snide comments. But that was it. A few words, a non-factor, a nothing burger. I kept making videos, and they probably even forgot that they said anything. You see, people don't really have the time to dwell on you, and if they do, especially in a negative way, it often reflects their insecurities, their doubts, and not your worth. So what does this mean? It means I urge you to start that interest, that side hustle, that passion project, that something else that makes you tick, because no one else will start it for you, and you can't let the opinions from people that haven't even set out to do what you're trying to do stop you from moving forward. The second point is to understand what is actually important to you. This helps act as a guiding principle, a foundational truth that you live by, and so a personal guide on how to be bold and have the courage to be disliked. For SpongeBob, this was a bond, a friendship. Despite struggling, this guiding principle always was kept at the back of his mind and eventually led him to making the right decision. For me, my guiding principle is my faith, with a verse from the Bible, Proverbs 29:25, providing an overarching anchor to this topic. Fear of man will prove to be a snare, but whoever trusts in the Lord is kept safe. Delineating that the fear of being judged, the ridicule of man, of not belonging, could entangle me, render me motionless, stop me from being bold, but doesn't, because I know whom I trust. So when I have similar struggles to SpongeBob, and like a pendulum often sway side to side, my guiding principle will always bring me back to a peaceful equilibrium. And so in times of uncertainty, a reflection on what's important can also do the same for you. Today, with only a few clicks, social media has the ability to positively impact millions, but only if people are bold enough to share their wisdom, even when their opinions are contrary to popular but misguided beliefs. Nelson Mandela once said, "Fools multiply when wise men are silent," which once again, with only a few clicks, we can all see that this couldn't be closer to the truth. So with this, I hope any wise listeners can overcome fear, be bold, spread wisdom, so positive change will be televised. You made it to this point of the video, it's much appreciated, thanks for sticking around. I've actually got 2 call to actions for you before you leave. The first call to action is, if you could be so kind, be so bold, courageous, by dropping a like on this video if it brought you any value. I know you're probably thinking the irony, but it does help with all that YouTube fun stuff in the background, and of course if this message is worthwhile being spread, then you can do that job, you can help out with that. Second call to action would be, if you want to stay on this platform, then I've got a great video for you over here on cancel culture, the dark world of cancel culture, showcased, depicted by many characters that you probably know and love. So that's there for you. But until next time, stay blessed, take care, and peace.